Good morning, you guys. Okay, so today we're going to go ahead and do the first maintenance on the bike after we've ridden it. In actuality, with kind of breaking in the cam, the piston and so on, and taking it for its first long ride. We've got close to 50 miles on the bike now. I apologize about the last video. The ride video is horrible. I hope to get a setup for that to make it a better ride experience for you guys. But I haven't got that settled yet. Not sure exactly the best way. I'm kind of leaning towards a chest mount for the camera, and that should smooth out the video a lot, but haven't purchased that yet, and I am looking at getting that done fairly soon. Hopefully we'll get it done before we end up getting the bike out of here, but we will see how that goes. So today we're going to cover the 1,000-mile maintenance on the from the book directly. We'll just go through all the steps, and then we will also do parts of the 3,000 mile, with the exception of changing the fork oil, because that's brand new and it's all clean and so on, so I'm not going to go through that step. But we are going to change the engine oil. We're going to do the engine tune-up, which will include the cam chain adjustment, valve adjustment. We'll do a compression test. We'll do a spark plug inspection. We'll do the points and condenser, we'll do the ignition timing, and let's see, we'll do the carburetor adjustment. The air cleaner service we won't do because those are brand new. I actually took off the stock filters because I want to preserve those. They're hard to come by, and I put on some aftermarket filters for the bike after we did the initial startup and so on. So I'm going to tune the carburetors to these filters, and the carburetors I'm running on the bike are aftermarket carburetors, so they could probably be better. And again, I need to tune those in, sync the carburetors up so they both open equally at the same time. It's pretty close, but I think it's a little off. And we could definitely adjust the air-fuel ratio on it as well. And depending on how the spark plugs look now, I may change the needle jet to lean it or richen it, depending on what it needs. And I'm suspecting maybe leaning it. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull the oil plugs and drain the oil. Okay, so there are two bolts on the bottom of the bike for draining the oil. And let me show you those real quick if I can. But basically there is this bolt right here. That's for at the crankcase, and then there is another bolt. Not sure if you can see it. There is another bolt right here, and that's for the transmission. And they're both 17. Need to be taken off, and of course drain the oil. And then under the cover here is a oil slinger filter, if you will. It's basically a centrifugal filter. Take off the 3 screws. There's an 8mm threaded bolt that will go into the filter. You have to pull out the 6mm and then put in the 8, and that extracts the filter. It's got an O-ring on it. So we'll get to that as soon as we get done draining the oil out. I don't see any oil, any sheen in the oil like metal flakes or anything. It looks pretty good. Pulling off the one for the transmission area now. So we'll go ahead and just let that drain out. It looks pretty clean. It does have some break-in lubrication in there for the cam and so on, so I would expect it to be somewhat darker. And in total, there's just a little over a quart in the bike. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the side cover off here. Make sure you use a fairly good sized Phillips screwdriver to take your side bolt covers off, so you don't strip them out. And if you have to, use an impact driver to get yours off. I put these on fairly tight, but not so tight that I would have to use the impact driver. But you don't want them coming off also on the road. So there's a couple notches here in the side cover. This cover has an O-ring on it, so it's a fairly tight fit. So you just kind of start working it off. You don't really have to use any pressure at all. You just start working it side to side. Actually, if I got a second screwdriver, it'd probably go faster. Something with a fairly good sized blade so you can get into the notches without marring them. And you just get them to where it loosens up and you should be able to pull it right off. So that right there is the oil filter slinger, and inside of it is a Phillips head screw that holds the filter cover in, or the inner part of the filter. And I don't know if you can see it in there, but that's the screw that needs to come out. And on the outside of that is threads for the 8mm bolt that you insert to extract the filter. I'm trying to get a little wire behind it here and get it out. And there we go. Into the oil it goes. So, anyway, let's see, where is it? There it is. So we got the screw out. Now we need to extract the filter. And I'm hoping this is it, but it might be bigger. So that's a 12 and that's too small. I think it's a 13 or a 14. It's a 13. So you just tighten that up. And you can see it already extracting the filter out. Almost do it by hand at this point. Sorry guys, just bumped you. And there you go. Bringing you guys in, get a little light on the subject. So that's inside the filter there. And right now it actually looks pretty clean. So let's see what we can get out of it here at this point. So you can see some dirt in there. And you know, that's what you get out of it. I don't know if you can see on my finger, there's a little bit of sludge there. And that's what it'll do. It'll basically sling any heavier particles to the outside of the filter and it'll collect on the wall of the filter. And you just go in there and clean it out with a rag, which I'll get here in a second. But once you get that cleaned out, you clean up the cover. Make sure you oil the O-ring here that's on the cover itself. And then, you know, clean up the fins and so on. And then you basically slide it back in and bolt it down with the 6mm bolt. Okay, so I've cleaned out the inside of the filter. I've actually lubed this outer lip here for the O-ring that goes in. Here is the centrifugal filter cleaned up now. And I've oiled up the O-ring here as well. So that's all oiled up. And basically what you want to do is get these fins lined up with this inner notch in here. So you want to make sure you get it kind of in place. And then just slide it in, and that's that. So, oops, sorry you guys, kind of close there, aren't you? So these are the two bolts. This is the one that holds the filter in when it's operating normally, and then this is the one that I extracted it with. So that's a 6mm and that's an 8mm side by side, so you can see the difference. We'll go ahead and put the center bolt back in and get it started on the threads here. And you can see it kind of line everything up. And it starts to draw the slinger filter in. And that's it. And then this cover goes on, and this only goes in one way. These two oil holes have corresponding oil holes here and here. So you want to make sure you line up the cover the proper way. Get the screws started. I'll let them draw it down evenly here. And our next step will be to just go ahead and add oil to the engine. So we need to pull the oil cap off here and dipstick. And the motor holds about 1.2 quarts of oil. Then we got another quart here that we're going to put in. And this is the non-detergent. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but this is the non-detergent oil, and it is a SAE 30 weight ISO 100 non-detergent oil. Alright, so that is the required amount, but we will check it on the dipstick. So how you check it is just put it in, you don't tighten it, but you just get it to where it just starts. And there it is. And it is currently right at the full line. Alright you guys, now we're going to go ahead and do the cam chain adjustment. For my bike, I think there's different sizes I've seen on these bolts, but for my bike, or for this bike, it's not my bike, For this bike, it's a 9mm wrench, and literally all you do is loosen up the lock nut on it, and then you back out this nut here, or this bolt, and internally the bike has a cam chain adjuster that has a spring that pushes down on the adjuster wheel, and that is pretty much it. Once you back it out, and if it's really loose, you will hear it actually engage the cam more. But anyway, you go ahead and take that, and you take the locking bolt and you lock it back in place. And then you take the locking nut and you lock it back in place. And that is it. The cam chain is now adjusted. All right, so we're pulling out the spark plug right now. Just got this one loosened up. And I don't know how well you guys could see that or not, but basically it's a little bit dark around the outside but tan on the inside, which is about what I would expect to see. So it actually looks like it's running pretty good. Again, the center electrode is brown and the outside is a little darker, which is normal operation. Again, hopefully you guys can see that. But no, it looks like it's running really good. Clean those up and I'll check the gap on them. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do a compression test. I got just a push-in type. I don't want to do the screw-in type just because it's kind of a pain on this. But anyway, go ahead. So that is about 150. Alright, so that is 155 over here on this side, and that is 153. Really within about 2 pounds of each other. We're getting 155 on the right and 153 on the left. So 2 pounds, that's pretty damn clean. I'll go ahead and check the valve adjustment now. Okay, so I'm at top dead center on one of the marks here, you guys. Let's see if I can get you over there and show you. But basically, there's the mark for top dead center. And now one set of the valves should be loose in one cylinder, and the other set should be tight. And then we'll go ahead and rotate it 180 degrees and check the other valves. So I still need to pull the valve covers off. So let me get to that, and once that's done, then I can go ahead and check the lash. Alright, so currently with the adjustment the way it is on the top dead center of the crankshaft, the right cylinder is the loose cylinder, and we're going to go ahead and check the valve lash on that. I got 3 filler gauges out. One of them is a 001, the other's a 002, and the other's a 003. So hopefully I don't have to adjust them, but if I do, no problem. We can cover that, but basically what we're going to do is just check to see if the filler gauges slide evenly, and that one is in there, no problem. We'll go with the number 3, and that one is in there but with a little more drag. Number 1's going to be too loose, so let me go ahead and pull out number 4 here. So here's 004, and that goes in there, and that is actually a fair bit tighter. Let's go to number 5. I have a number 6, so let's go with a number 6, and number 6 is resistant to go in. So number 4 has a bit of drag, so it seems just slightly loose, which I would expect after kind of breaking in. So let me find number 4 again, and number 4 seems like that's where it's at right now. So we do need to go ahead and adjust the valve lash on that exhaust valve. So here's the 9mm, and that's the right one. But basically what we're going to do is just unlock the lock nut on it. And it is actually spinning the nut on the top there. So I have that adjusted now. Just going to check 4 here. 4 is too tight. Check number 2. Number 2 is trying to go in, but it's still a little too tight, so I'm going to back it off a little bit. And again, I'm just doing that by hand. So again, 4 is too tight. Here's number 3. Number 3 is too tight. Here's number 2. And number 2 is trying to go in, so I need to loosen it a little bit more. So I'll get the 2 again. And 2 is going in, and that's fairly stiff, so it should draw it up a little bit. So let me try to tighten it down and see what reading I get after that. All right, number 2. Number 2 feels pretty good. Do a number 1. Number 1 goes in loosely. Do a number 3. And number 3 is too tight, so it's currently at number 2, and it is tightened down. I'm going to give it one last little nip up here. Check it one last time. And 2 goes in. It's got a fair amount of drag on it. We're going to go with a number 1 again. Check that. Number 1 just slides right in. And number 3 is too tight. So we're at number 2 right now. So you want a fair amount of drag, but you don't really want to force it in there. Sometimes you kind of get a little false angle on it and it makes it harder to get in, but once you get it right, you'll know. Basically that's it. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them. I won't drag you through that procedure again, but that's basically the exhaust valve adjusted up. It was at about a number 4. It should have been a number 2 or 0.002, and in reality that is 0.5 millimeter or 0.5 millimeter. So 0.002 hundredths or thousandths, hundredths, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 2 thousandths of an inch. So there you go. All right. So I'll bring you back for the next procedure.